Welcome to Spaces and Shadows. You are listening to episode 1 of my 911 Lone Star fanfiction titled Good Enough. You are about to witness the events that lead to Carlos and TK's wedding and honeymoon. Headphones are recommended. This audio feature mature LGBTQ+ themes, sexual references, and sound effects that may be unsettling for certain listeners. Discretion is advised. The text may be found in my archive of our own profile. Link is in the description.
Do you, Tyler Kennedy Strand, take Carlos Reyes as your lawfully wedded husband, promise to love and cherish him in sickness or in health, in good times and in bad, for as long as you both shall live?
I do.
Do you, Carlos Reyes, take Tyler Kennedy Strand as your lawfully wedded husband, promise to love and cherish him in sickness or in health, in good times and in bad, for as long as you both shall live?
Carlos! Carlos! Oh my god. Oh my god, Carlos, stay with me. Stay with me, baby. Stay with me. 5 days ago. Babe, you sure you have to go to work? I miss you already. TK said while running his fingers through Carlos's hair. It was 5 p.m. in the late afternoon. TK and Carlos were laying naked under the sheets in bed. I have to go, babe. Got a case to crack. I'll be home before you know it, Carlos said as he got out of the bed, pulling a fresh set of underwear, undershirt, and a uniform from the closet. TK watched as Carlos put on his uniform. He thought to himself how lucky he was that this beautiful man was going to be his husband in a few days. He rolled over on his belly and held his head on both his knuckles and said, "How do you look so good naked and also in uniform?" I thought you liked me better in my yoga outfit. Carlos chuckled as he looked into a full-size mirror and buttoned up his uniform. Yeah, and that too. You sure you don't want to stay just a little while longer? TK got out of the bed, walked towards Carlos to give him a hug from the back, and they both swayed slowly left to right as TK rested his lips on Carlos's neck. Carlos could feel TK's soft lips with his slow breaths synchronized with every sway their body made. Carlos held onto the arms wrapped on his belly. This little moment that they shared was something that was going to get Carlos through his night shift. Babe, Carlos whispered, turning his head over his shoulder to see TK's face. You're making it harder to leave. Then stay a little longer. I mean, you could always turn on those sirens to get through the traffic, TK persuaded. Well, you're gonna turn me on instead if you don't put on some clothes right now. Carlos giggled and broke out of the embrace, turning his body to TK to hold his face with his right hand. Babe, go get dressed, or you're gonna catch a cold before our wedding. Fine. You're such a control freak. TK rolled his eyes as he said that. Oh, you love it. Carlos nodded his head several times as he said that, and gave TK a kiss on the lips. He made his way out of the bedroom and grabbed his keys from the bowl on the shelf. As he was about to walk out of the front door, he turned to see TK still naked, standing by the bedroom door, resting his shoulders on the door frame. Be safe out there, Carlos. I will. I love you, Carlos said before he shut the door. The police station was unusually quiet as Carlos was about to take a seat. He was triggered at the state of his unfamiliar-looking desk. His files were on the other side of the table, and his favorite black and blue pens that he laid in a parallel fashion in the middle of the table were now placed within the stationery cup. "Okay, who touched my desk? Very funny prank." Carlos looked around to see everyone silently working on their desk. As he turned around, an unfamiliar man in uniform was standing uncomfortably close to him.
Hi! Oh, I didn't mean to scare you. Hi, I'm Donnie Miller, the new transfer from NYPD.
"Nice to meet you, Officer Miller," Carlos said as he dipped his head and slowly took a step back to space out from the uncomfortable position.
You must be Officer Reyes. I heard a lot about you. Your colleagues told me so many stories about you.
Donnie said with a wide smile on his face. He was excited, like he met a celebrity.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I knocked over your files earlier on, so I placed them on the other side so they won't get in the way. And I tidied up your desk a little. Hope you don't mind.
Carlos was about to freak out upon hearing that, but thanked his lucky stars when his colleague Sergeant Daniel came over and placed a cup of coffee on his table, saving him from further awkwardness. "Hey man, you're gonna need a cup of coffee. Captain wants to see you." "Oh, and thank you for inviting us to your wedding. All of us are excited," Daniel said as he tapped Carlos's shoulder with one hand and took a bite off his burrito on the other. Carlos blushed, said thanks, and made his way to the captain's office, leaving Donnie and Daniel to chat. "Captain, you wanted to see me?" Carlos said as he knocked on the open door of Captain Nelson's office. "Officer Reyes, come in, take a seat." The captain was busy working on his computer prior. He turned his chair to center himself to the desk and placed both hands on the table. "So, as we all know, Sergeant Parker was dismissed. So I was wondering if you could take over his case," the captain said as he put a file on the desk. "Maybe you can consider this as an opportunity for you to get a promotion, Officer Reyes." "Me? Captain, are you sure? I mean, there are others who are much more capable. What about my partner, Mitchell?" Carlos was dumbfounded. He was expecting to be disciplined for something he might have done wrong on the job. "Officer Mitchell have her hands full at the moment. But let me tell you this, you're doing impressive work, Officer Reyes, and you came highly recommended after you solved the case with the missing girl," the captain said and leaned back to his chair. "I know I'm asking a lot from you right now before your wedding, but we could really use your help." "Captain, Carlos looked down to his boots and was searching for the right words to say. All his hard work in the police department had led to this moment. The promotion and salary increment wasn't something that he needed now, but it would be useful someday when he decides to start a family with TK. After a few seconds of thought, he looked up and said with confidence, "Captain, it would be my honor to take this case. I won't let you down." "That's what I want to hear. Anyway, I'd like you to meet someone." The captain looks out to the window and calls out, "Officer Miller."
Yes, Captain.
Donnie stumbles into the captain's office. "Officer Reyes, this is Officer Donnie Miller, our new transfer from the NYPD. He's still fresh out of the academy, and I think you'll be a perfect fit to supervise and show him the ropes on the field." Carlos looked back and forth several times at Donnie and the captain, with his eyes widened and his jaw dropped to the floor. "Seriously, Donnie?" Carlos said. The captain had his chin down and his eyes up at Carlos and said, "Would that be a problem, Officer Reyes? I mean, if you're not up for it, then..." No, not at all. I would be glad to rope him. I mean, to show him the ropes," Carlos interrupted as he tried to contain himself. "Perfect. I'll see the both of you in the briefing room in an hour."
Bridge. It was a false alarm. Resuming patrol.
Copy that 929L20.
After the meeting, Donnie was riding passenger side of Carlos's cruiser with a notebook and pen in his hand, taking down notes as Carlos spoke of some rules and regulations of the APD.
Okay, so I'll just be sharing a desk with you in the meantime?
Donnie said as he rested the back of a pen on his lips. Yes, but okay, rule number 1, don't touch anything on my desk. Carlos was still upset about Donnie rearranging his desk. He turned to have a quick look at Donnie and did a double take. Wait, where did you get that pen?
Oh, this? It was on your desk.
Donnie said, like it was just an ordinary pen. Give me that. Carlos snatched his pen back and put it into his pocket as soon as he realized that was his favorite pen. That pen was no ordinary pen to Carlos. It was an expensive, customized, printed and engraved pen that TK got for Carlos as a Valentine's Day gift. He proudly displays it on his desk so that it'll be the first thing that he sees when he gets to work, reminding him to return home safely to TK. Donnie lifted his shoulders and eyebrows in disbelief that someone would care so much about a pen. He flipped several pages on his notebook and said,
So, this perp, is he like a drug dealer or something?
Yeah, the suspect's name is Jonathan Reeves, reported to be living in an apartment with his parents around the corner. We're just gonna drive by and have a look.
We're gonna bust him? Right now?
Donnie was getting nervous. It was his first day in the APD and he had never gotten the opportunity to get such exciting field experience during his short stint at the NYPD. Donnie, not right now. I mean, it's on the way back to the station, so we're just driving by, Carlos said as he turned the car at a cross junction and he observed the said apartment complex as they drove by. Their shift was coming to an end. Carlos was back in the office, arranging his desk back to the way he liked it. He stared at the nameplate at the front that read Officer Carlos Reyes. He was having second thoughts about taking up the case, afraid that he might not make a good sergeant if he was promoted. He let out a sigh and left the office to drive home. TK was just getting out of bed when he heard someone at the door, fiddling with keys. He walked out of the bedroom and waited for Carlos to come through the front door. Good morning, babe. How's work? TK said as Carlos closed the front door behind. You're not gonna believe it. I'm supervising a new transfer and the first thing he did was to rearrange my desk. Carlos was dragging his feet towards TK as he said that. Babe, did I ever tell you that you're so adorable when you're mad sometimes? TK giggles. TK, he had the pen on his lips. The pen! The one you gave me on Valentine's Day. I had to drown it in a bowl of hand sanitizer and now the ink's all dried up, Carlos said as he bobbed his head several times in frustration. What? No way! I'm getting you a new one! TK was trying to pull a serious tone of voice behind a smile that he was trying hard to contain. It's okay, babe. Carlos sighed as he sat on the couch. Oh, and I took on a case. A pretty big one. What do you mean? TK said, tilting his head to the left in confusion as he joined Carlos on the couch. Carlos closed the gap between them and reached for TK's hands. That means I might be getting a promotion. Well, after I take the examination, of course. Carlos broke into a smile. Babe, that's wonderful. Why isn't this the first thing you say when you came home? TK said, pulling Carlos into a hug. Ooh, I get to brag and say my husband's a sergeant after we get married. Actually, I'm still considering it. I'm not sure. I'm afraid that I might not be good enough. I'm not a really good problem solver, Carlos said as he broke out of the hug, still holding onto TK's hands. Well, Carlos, I was a problem that you figured out and solved. So there's nothing you can't do, babe. TK kissed Carlos on his cheeks. Carlos gave a wide smile but stayed silent. I'm so proud of you, babe. TK had his hand on Carlos's face with his thumb rubbing his cheeks in circles. You have my full support, even if it means that I'm gonna be alone in bed for the next few days. How about we skip breakfast and make up for that in bed right now? TK giggled as Carlos said that under his breath. They started kissing their way into the bedroom and fell into the bed. It was 2 hours past midnight. Several police cars gathered at the foot of an apartment complex. Carlos was taking the lead for this operation and briefed the team on his plan. Carlos and Donnie took the lead and made their way to the 3rd floor, along with a sergeant and several other officers supporting them from the back. Donnie, you're ready, Carlos whispered to Donnie, who was looking nervous. Donnie, you've trained for this. You got this. Donnie silently nodded his head, and Carlos took that as the cue to kick down the front door where the suspect was residing. Hey PD, show me your hands! In the air, right now! The door opened to reveal a shocked man and woman sitting on the couch in front of a television. Carlos commanded, pointing his pistol at the couple. The rest of the squad checked from room to room. Where is Jonathan? Where is he? Carlos yelled. Carlos, this door is locked, Sergeant Daniel said as he tried to open the door by the television. Stand back, I'm gonna break it down. As soon as Sergeant Daniel said that, a bullet flew by and barely missed him. The man had hid a pistol within the couch and managed to grab it in half a second to fire a round at Sergeant Daniel. Carlos quickly fired an accurate shot at the man's chest. The man dropped the gun and fell to the ground from the couch as his wife screamed in fear. Sergeant Daniel broke the door down, only to reveal an empty bedroom with the window open. He looked down from the window to see an open rubbish dumpster, which could have been used by Jonathan to break the fall during the escape. Damn it! The suspect got away! Sergeant Daniel yelled. Carlos took a knee by the man he shot and checked the pulse on his neck. He felt a heartbeat and heard his shallow breathing. He called it in to send the paramedics to the scene. Several minutes later, paramedics arrived and took the man away to the hospital, while the rest of the police squad escorted the woman to the police station. Sergeant Daniel placed a hand on Carlos's shoulder and said, Hey, great shot, Carlos. You saved me. You did good. Not good enough, Sergeant. The suspect got away, Carlos said. He was disappointed and couldn't look at Sergeant Daniel in the eyes. We'll get him next time, Officer Reyes. Call it a night. Go home to your fiancée. We'll talk tomorrow. Sergeant Daniel patted Carlos on his shoulders and made his way out of the apartment. Carlos turned to see Donnie leaning against a wall, arms folded, looking out the windows. You alright, Donnie? Carlos was concerned, as it was Donnie's first time in such an intense situation.
Yeah, I just feel maybe I'm not good enough. I feel useless, man.
Donnie turned his head to Carlos. Yeah, you and me both. Carlos tried to fake a smile. Back at the station, Carlos was low-spirited as he tidied up his desk before leaving for the night. He rearranged his two favorite pens in a parallel fashion in the middle of the desk. Carlos stared at the black pens and engraved text and read, "I love you, come home safe." Although his operation failed, he was able to break into a smile. He pulled his jacket from the chair and made his way out of the office to drive home. It was 5 a.m. in the morning when Carlos arrived home. He changed into his sleepwear and joined TK on the bed, who was sound asleep. He turned his body to the side, away from TK. He closed his eyes and tried to suppress the negative thoughts to get some sleep. "Hey babe, you're home early," TK said as he rubbed his eyes. Carlos's movement on the bed had woken him up. Carlos didn't say a word. TK knew Carlos well enough that something was bothering him. TK turned over for a cuddle and had his arms over Carlos's chest. "Rough night?" Carlos hummed, with his eyes closed. "You want to talk about it?" "No, wait. Let's talk about it." TK was determined to make Carlos feel better. He wasn't going to let Carlos go to sleep feeling upset. "I blew it. The suspect got away when we bust into his apartment." Carlos sighed. "I guess I'm just not up for it. Maybe I'm just not good enough for anything," Carlos whispered, but it was loud enough for TK to hear it. "I'm sorry to hear that, but baby, I don't want you to ever say that you're not good enough for anything." TK ran his fingers on Carlos's hair. "I just want you to know that you'll always be good enough for me. Aren't you disappointed in me for not getting that promotion?" Carlos said as he tried to contain his tears. "Baby, why would you say that?" TK was upset that Carlos would say such a thing. "TK, what if..." Carlos turned himself to face TK. "What if one day I'm not good enough for you, or anything at all? Will you still love me?" "Baby," TK said as he sat upright against the backboard of the bed. "When you be with someone, you accept all that they are. The good and the bad. It doesn't matter if it was in the past, present, or the future. Baby, when I asked you to marry me that night, it was because I love all of you. Each and every piece of you." TK's words were comforting. Carlos realized that the promotion wasn't all that important as long as TK's by his side. However, it wasn't enough to stop Carlos from tearing up. Carlos, don't you ever doubt how much I love you." TK put a hand on Carlos's wet face. The pillow was getting wet from Carlos's tears. "I don't care about your promotion. I just love you so much, and I just want you to be happy. Because I can only be happy when you are." TK kissed Carlos's forehead, and Carlos stretched an arm and leg over TK's body for a cuddle. "I love you, baby," Carlos said. "Well, I know something that might cheer you up," TK said, tapping his index finger on Carlos's nose several times, while Carlos looked up with a frown. "The wedding planner called. They said everything's set for Saturday, and we could come by later to have a look." "Really? They got everything? Even the blue carpet?" Carlos's eyes was gleaming. He sat up from the bed and held TK's hands. "Yes, babe." TK smiled and nodded. "They have everything set up exactly the way you planned it." "How? I thought they weren't able to source for all of that," Carlos said. "Well, I might have pulled some strings," TK said. "I didn't just sleep all day when I'm on leave from work, babe. I know how much it'll mean to you if we get everything perfect for the wedding, exactly the way we talked about. So you better love me more, you control freak." TK lightly pinched Carlos's cheeks. Carlos chuckled and kissed TK on the lips. The morning came around. Carlos and TK took a 45-minute drive to Lake Bastrop. This location was perfect for their wedding because it brought back memories when it all started. It was one of Carlos and TK's favorite moments during the early stages of their relationship. The cold, late night, lying on the hood of the car, stargazing at the beautiful night sky. It was the first time TK reached for Carlos's hand with the intention to keep him by his side forever. They drove by tall trees and lush greenery. Carlos glanced at the passenger seat, catching TK smiling as he looked out the window. TK looked back with a grin and placed his hand on Carlos's right hand that was on the gear shift stick. They pulled into the parking lot of a resort and made their way to the open field. A large decorated gazebo by a swimming pool emerged in their view as they walked around the corner of the main building. There were speaker monitors and a DJ system all set and ready for the after party, fairy lights hanging from pole to pole, parallel to the length of the pool. Carlos and TK held hands as they made their way into the field, where a white, tall and large event tentage was set up, with rows of red chairs separated by an aisle of blue carpet leading to the platform stage out in the sun. "Well, what do you think?" TK said, looking at Carlos, who stood rooted to the ground with a gummy smile and eyes in awe. "It's perfect, TK," Carlos said, as he took a moment to take in how perfect everything was, from the setup to the beautiful backdrop of Lake Bastrop behind the stage. "This place is going to look beautiful at night," Carlos said as he panned his view from the fairy lights hanging on the ceiling to the calm lake. "Wait till you see what happens when we kiss on that stage," TK teased. "What? What's gonna happen?" Carlos was feeling suspicious. He didn't plan for anything to happen for the moment they kissed during the ceremony. "I had to put a little Tyler Kennedy special. You'll find out soon enough. It's a surprise." TK held on to Carlos's hands as he kissed him on his cheek. "Huh. I hate surprises. I wonder what you have up in your sleeves," Carlos said as he looked into the lake, where he noticed 3 men on a small floating platform in the middle of the lake, setting up something that he couldn't really make out of. TK waved to a man in a suit who was approaching from the main building. "Nice to see you, TK, and you must be Carlos. Pleasure to finally meet you," the general manager said as he shook Carlos's hand. "I'm Aaron Wesley, the manager of the Greenview Resort, and I can't tell you what an honor it is to host your wedding. As per your request, we've booked 12 inns for your guest, and the pool area will be closed to the public for your enjoyment. Oh, and as a wedding gift, we would like to gift you a complimentary stay at our finest premium private lodge." Carlos and TK looked at each other in disbelief. The private lodge was a premium that they couldn't fit into their budget. "I'll leave the both of you to your rehearsal. Please don't hesitate to tell me if you need anything else," Wesley said, and made his way back to the main building of the resort. "Rehearsal?" Carlos asked TK with a raised eyebrow, feeling confused. "Everything has to be perfect, babe," TK said as he pulled Carlos and headed to the stage, where a man assuming the role of a solemnizer was standing on.
Do you, Tyler Kennedy Strand, take Carlos Reyes as your lawfully wedded husband, promise to love and cherish him in sickness or in health, in good times and in bad, for as long as you both shall live?"
"I do," TK said, holding on to the hands of Carlos, pretending to put a ring on his finger.
Do you, Carlos Reyes, take Tyler Kennedy Strand as your lawfully wedded husband, promise to love and cherish him in sickness or in health, in good times and in bad, for as long as you both shall live?
Carlos wasn't paying attention. He was zoned out, smiling and admiring how beautiful TK looked as the sun shined on his face and his eyes reflected a shade of blue with a hint of green. Baby. TK tried to get Carlos's attention. Baby, this is the part you say I do, TK said with a smile, raising both eyebrows. Carlos brought his attention back to the moment and took a deep breath. His mouth opened, but before he could say anything, Carlos? TK. Carlos! Somebody call 911! Oh my god, Carlos, stay with me! Stay with me, baby, stay with me. Thank you for listening. You've made it through episode 1. Stick around to the end to get a sneak peek of next week's episode. Subscribe to get a notification as soon as it's released. Chat with me on Twitter at Spaces and Shadows. I'd love to connect with all of you and hear what are your thoughts on this episode. Take care, be kind to one another, and I'll see you next week.
Next episode of 911 Lone Star by Spaces and Shadows.
911, what's your emergency?
My fiancé is being shot. We're at Greenview Resorts by Lake Bastrop. Please hurry, he's losing a lot of blood. Hey, baby, look at me. You gotta stay awake. Seriously, Dad, I'm fine. It's Carlos we have to worry about. I want you to be okay, just so that I can be okay too. I need you, Carlos. I don't know what to say to Mr. and Mrs. Reyes. I feel responsible for what happened to Carlos. He didn't deserve this.
All new episode coming next Monday, only on YouTube.